Alright, I want to point out a couple of things as I start this video. I am tentatively calling this video Airtable versus Chatbase. Now that title is not really a good explanation of what I'm going to talk about in this video, because I don't think that those two tools are comparable in any way. And if you are watching this video because you think Chatbase is a Airtable alternative, that's not true. Airtable is a completely different tool. And at the same time, Chatbase is not very suitable for low volume Dialogflow bots and when you're initially getting started. And I've explained this in my article on my site called Dialogflow Conversation Analytics Tips. I'll leave a link for that article below the video. And the main gist of it is that Chatbase does not so think of funnels in Chatbase and funnels in Google Analytics, right? In Google Analytics, when you click on, let's say you click from one page to the other, what registers as a click is actually what happened. In the case of Chatbase though, the intent mapping that Chatbase does is, it's possible that it could be wrong. Right? You have to go and verify if the intent was mapped correctly. In fact, they have an entire framework which they refer to as the UMM framework, which is actually what you have to do to analyze the accuracy of your bot's mapping. And until you have fine-tuned it to nearly perfect levels, Chatbase is not really going to be telling you much. Right? So in the initial stages, Chatbase is not a particularly useful tool. So what I instead suggest is that you use something like Airtable. And when I say something like Airtable, I'm going to show you a few features that I have in Airtable so that you can see what it has, the benefits that it provides. And then maybe if you find a similar tool to do the same thing, you can go and use it. I prefer Airtable because I think the user interface is really good. And I also think that it's a very mature software, you know. So here is the Airtable table I have, and what it's actually doing is it's collecting conversation logs from this Dialogflow CX based bot I have built on my site. What is the bot about? It allows you to choose between Dialogflow ES and CX and Actions Builder, and you ask, you interact with the bot, it will ask you a few questions, and based on the answers, it is going to give you a suggestion. So let's say that, so I start by typing the word help, and it's just going to come back and ask me, what kind of bot I'm building. So, okay, actually it first starts with, do you need help? And I'll say yes. And then it asks, what channel are you using? And I might say something like website bot. Then it asks, do you have the budget to hire a programmer? Let's say I say no. So it immediately offers a suggestion which says, if you don't prefer to hire a programmer, the best choice is Dialogflow ES because it is the most non-programmer friendly edition of Dialogflow. And you also have this option to start over. Now, the thing is, there's a decision tree which is sort of powering this bot. I'm not going to go into the details of that. I will cover that in my Dialogflow CX course, and you can take a look at it if you want. But the important thing is that all these interactions are getting logged into my Airtable table. All right. Now the thing is, if I were to sort it by the timestamp, which is when, and then I do a reverse, you will see that my latest interaction has been logged. You can see this website bot here, and it has this time. So this is the I have created this log of all the interactions which are happening between the CX bot and the user. And it actually gets, all this information is getting recorded into this Airtable table. And notice that I have extracted the specific fields. There's the session ID and the query and the response, the intent name, and then the full JSON object. You don't have a score coming back in the case of CX with the way I'm doing the integration, but let's not worry about that right now. And I have this field called end of conversation. But notice that I also have this field called accuracy, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, here's the point, right? If you're not sure whether the mapping is accurate, as I point out, the conversation, the chat-based funnels are not going to be of much help. Instead, it's much more useful to log all the information from your conversation into a tool like Airtable. So what does Airtable allow me to do, and why do I think that it is so useful? Let's take a quick example, right? If I can group this entire table, everything in the table using the session ID, which is exactly what I did. And notice that as soon as I do that, it's actually, you can see that it's reading like the conversation's transcript itself, right? So user will say yes, and which is when they first answer if they want help. And then it's asking what channel, and then it's okay, it's reversed, it's inverted over here based on time. So if I just remove that sort, let's go ahead and do that. And here you can see that the user says help, and then it's going to come back with this response. The user says yes, and then it's going to say something else. And let's go to a different conversation, and the user starts with help, and then the bot comes back with this response, and they say yes. What channel? They say Facebook Messenger. It asks, do you have the budget to hire a programmer? And see that the user is actually saying no, but I can program myself, right? The bot thought that the user said no, but that's not really what the user has said here. They are saying no, but I can program myself, which is to say that they are a programmer, and the bot shouldn't have come back with the specific response, right? Now, this is where the accuracy field is going to be useful, because you can mark this as one of these 5 values, where TP means true positive, FP is false positive, true negative, false negative, and unknown. I have an article about measuring the accuracy of your bot on my site. I will also leave a link to that article under the video. But the main point I'm making here is that looking at this Airtable, you can first of all get sort of like an overview of these conversations, right? You can read them as if they are transcripts of the conversation. All right, so that's one thing. So I'm going to ungroup it and go back to the original view. And then the other thing is that you can fill out this accuracy field, right? Let's just say I'm going to fill this out as true positive, false positive. I'm not actually looking at the responses, I'm just doing something here. The point I'm making is that once you do all this, you can then calculate the actual accuracy of your bot, which is something that you obviously want to do, right? That's something that will be very useful for you to measure the accuracy of your bot. It's a question that people ask me quite a bit. And at low volumes, it's actually possible for you to do this, right? At low volumes, you should be able to go through all the transcripts and see how accurate your bot is, and then you can design some intents to improve the accuracy, right? So that's the big advantage of using Airtable instead of Chatbase when you are starting to build your bot. Okay, now when you do it like that, what happens is that you get much more, first of all, having a look at these logs will be helpful because you get a good picture of what is going on with your bot. You can also do that with the history feature in Dialogflow ES. It's not yet available in Dialogflow CX, but the point is that to be able to measure something like an accuracy, or to be able to get a good way of improving the bot based on the conversation logs, it's actually much better if you have a tool like this Airtable table. Now, I think that Airtable is very useful for this particular task. You might have a different tool. I'm guessing that the competitors that have been announced by Google and Microsoft recently for Airtable might also be able to do the job. I don't know, I've not really looked at them. The important point I'm making, of course, is that you have this ability to get a good picture of what is going on in your bot as soon as you start logging the conversations to a tool like Airtable, because Airtable is, a kind of sort of like a combination between a spreadsheet and a database, which means that it's easy for the non-programmers to be like using the tool and act like admins, and at the same time it's powerful enough to behave as if it is a database, because all the information is tabular in nature, right? So these are all the things that I want to point out. When you are building your bot, you might want to consider, number one, logging all the information into a structured database. You don't have to go all the way to actually get a real database for that. Because the problem with that, if you choose to, let's say, log everything to SQL Server or Postgres or something like that, then you will have to design an entirely new admin interface for the person who's going to be reviewing all these conversations to measure accuracy, right? Because usually that's not the developer. Instead, it's the person who's asking the developer to build the bot. And the other thing is that you can, when you have a tool like Airtable, you can actually add more fields to this later on if you want to do something like that. And all these things are much easier in a tool like Airtable. It's much easier for the person who's asking for the bot to be built, right? I'm not talking about the developer. I'm talking about the person who wants to create this chatbot, right? So with all this, I think that it's better for you to get started with a tool like Airtable. And of course, there's nothing preventing you from also sending the same information over to Chatbase for future use, if that's what you want. And if your bot becomes a high, it starts handling a lot more messages and it becomes a high volume bot, I would think that something like this will not be a good choice when you reach that stage with your bot. Okay, so with all that said, I would also like to point out that I'm going to add a chapter to my Dialogflow CX course, and the course actually has a fairly good offer going on right now. I'll also leave a link below the video to this. You can get it at a pretty substantial discount till the end of April 2021. Okay, so I'll be talking about how I built this bot. This is a CX bot, and I'll also explain how I log the messages from the bot to this Airtable table I have over here, and then I also show you how you can use this to measure the accuracy of your bot. It's going to be a pretty simple stuff. It's not going to be very deep, but the point is that I think that it's better for people to start with a tool like Airtable instead of jumping directly into Chatbase, which they can always use later on once they get the accuracy of their bot fine-tuned to appropriate levels. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this particular video, and I hope that you get a good picture of how you might want to do analytics in Dialogflow, at least at the beginning. I think that it's better to use a tool where you can store all the conversation logs in a tabular structure like this, and you're able to do some quick manipulations such as adding fields for indicating whether the mapping of the intent was right or not. You can, if you can get a tool where it's possible for not the programmer but the person who's building the bot, if it's easy for them to administer this, to be the admin and to be able to do all these things through a drag and drop kind of a user interface, or a point and click in this particular case, then it might be a good way for you to get started with your bot.